Would like to dive in and really learn a lot about आपकी जो journey थी कैसी थी.
I was in America and वहाँ पे San Francisco में काफ़ी बड़ा thrift culture होता है and it was very interesting. मैंने पहली दफ़ा ऐसे देखा था and there were these really beautiful high-end shops which had like branded luxury items where you could sell your stuff and you could also get stuff. और कोई नहीं कर रहा है तो मैं क्यों नहीं कर सकती हूँ? And so I decided to quit my corporate job. And so I'm working at the biggest FMCG MNC in Pakistan. Not just building a brand, but building a market. Because the idea of secondhand, pre-loved, was taboo, right? And it's become much more mainstream and there were a lot of reasons for it. But Pakistan is a society which is very, log kya kahenge, aap secondhand, purani cheezein use kar rahe hain.
What was it like? Were you getting lots and lots of inquiries and people wanting to buy stuff? Did the site become really popular?
Overnight to change nahi hone wala hai, right? But it was kind of creeping in slowly. People were looking at it and we got traction and it was a steady rise. And we've had international orders like randomly from like some stranger in America or London. And because I was a female Pakistani targeting Pakistani women, it was like, I know my customer, I am my customer. And you just have to have the like problem solving mindset. You're like, okay, this has happened. What do we do to fix this? So how do we manage that?
Welcome to The Boss. I'm Amer Qureshi. और इस हफ्ते once again we're coming to you from Karachi. You know, Karachi is the business capital of Pakistan and you get to meet all kinds of interesting people. And so today I'm joined by Nazish Hussain. And until recently she was the CEO and the founder of Secret Stash. But now I think you are the exited founder and CEO of Secret Stash. Nazish, welcome to The Boss.
Thank you for having me. And yes, I'm a very recently exited founder of Secret Stash.
Excellent. So, in fact, we've given it away, but before we talk about your exit from Secret Stash, let's go back to the beginning and talk about what it was. आपने किस तरह से शुरू किया? What was the vision behind it? और फिर ultimately आपने इसको, why did you exit that business and how did you go about exiting it? Because हर entrepreneur की एक dream ही होती है to build a business and then get out, although some want to continue, but आपने, you chose the path of exiting. So I would like to dive in and really learn a lot about आपकी जो journey थी कैसी थी. So if we go back to the start, पहले tell people about ये जो business था आपका Secret Stash, exactly क्या था and how did you come up with the idea?
So I have a corporate background in digital media and marketing, and I started my career at an agency, a media agency, and then I moved on the client side, and I was in the FMCG space at Unilever, and my specialization was online media and marketing. And मैं उस वक्त ट्रैवल कर रही थी. आई वॉज इन अमेरिका एंड वहाँ पे सैन फ्रांसिस्को में काफ़ी बड़ा थ्रिफ्ट कल्चर होता है एंड इट वॉज वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग. मैंने पहली दफ़ा ऐसे देखा था एंड देयर वर दीज रियली ब्यूटीफुल हाई एंड शॉप्स विच हैड लाइक branded luxury items where you could sell your stuff and you could also get stuff at a discount. And it was very new to me because, I mean, of course, growing up, we all knew about Itwar Bazaar, Sunday Bazaar, and all of these things. But, you know, it was like, oh, but this is like beautifully done up. It's not like, you know, कि आप कहीं जा रहे हैं and all that.
Second-hand goods खरीद रहे हैं.
Yeah, but it was done in such a nice way. And I was like, oh, you know, it was like an insight, an eye-opener for me. I was like, this should exist in Pakistan. And I was like, if I want it, other people would want it too. And why don't we have this at home? And this idea stayed with me. I came back. I was still working. And, you know, it kept saying कि किसी को ये करना चाहिए. Like, someone should do it.
लेकिन कोई नहीं कर रहा था उस वक्त.
This is a long time ago. This is around 2014 where I basically was like, और कोई नहीं कर रहा है तो मैं क्यों नहीं कर सकती हूँ? And so I decided to quit my corporate job. And so I'm working at the biggest FMCG MNC in Pakistan, Unilever.
People's dream to get a job in one of these FMCGs और आपने उसको छोड़ के अपना business launch कर दिया.
Yeah, मैंने कहा, it was an idea and I think there was some level of confidence in me that, you know, I can do this. And if it doesn't, what's the worst that'll happen? So it took me a few years to go full time, but this idea from the beginning was always that. And I think because my background was in media and I had been working on a lot of digital media stuff, and even though e-commerce us waqt was in its nascency, the Raz and all had just launched, people were not shopping online, it was all a new concept. I was like, this has to be online. It cannot be a physical retail shop. I was like, anyone should be able to buy from this. And so from the get go, it was like, it has to be a website. And the idea was that it would be online and we would use social media to promote it.
Okay.
And I think the idea also stemmed from the fact that my background was in media and marketing, and it was more of not just building a brand but building a market, because the idea of secondhand pre-loved was taboo, right? And it's become
Yes.
much more mainstream, and there were a lot of reasons for it. But Pakistan is a society which is very log kya kahenge aap second hand purani
ये
cheezein use
आई
kar
वुड हैव
rahe hain.
थॉट जब आपने लोगों से पूछा होगा इस बिजनेस के बारे में कि मैं इस तरह की का बिजनेस शुरू करना चाहती हूँ एंड ये सेकंड हैंड होगा सपोजिडली, तो इसमें दिस वुड हैव बीन अ मेजर मेजर रिएक्शन जो आपको मिला होगा, लोग क्या कहेंगे, मैं तो कोई पुरानी चीज़ नहीं पहन सकता या सकती. What, how did you deal with that?
So it was and is an anonymous platform. The buyers and the sellers will have no contact, and Secret Stash was the go-between in the middle, and it was a curated platform. And the idea was that trust and transparency is a very key
So
component
let's go
of
back a
this.
little bit. थोड़ा सा explain करेंगे how it actually worked.
So the idea was that it would be that if you have something that
Sell.
you that you're not using, right?
Yeah.
So you think of like consumer perspective, right? कि आपकी अलमारी में चीज़ें रखी हुई हैं and it's just taking up space. आपको किसी को देना नहीं है because you like I've spent so much money on it, but it's also taking up space. Living in Pakistan, things also get bad, right? Our humidity and all of that.
Yes.
आपने बाहर से चीज़ें खरीदा है, and the idea was also that we don't have a lot of international foreign brands in Pakistan, right?
ठीक
But
है.
people शौकीन तो हैं, सबको brands के बारे में पता है,
Yes.
but we just don't have it. And at the same time, there are also people who aspire to own these things, and they don't have either access to it, whether it's because of affordability, or they're not traveling, or any of these reasons. So some people have things that they don't want anymore, and other people have things that they want to get, but they don't have access to it.
Yeah.
And it's like a thing which they say in English, right? कि one man's trash is another man's treasure. We never use the
Absolutely.
word trash, but it's the same idea कि
ठीक है.
किसी को एक चीज़ जो उनकी ज़रूरत में नहीं है, someone else wants it, right? And we
Right.
provided this platform. And from the get-go, it was always anonymous, right? So no one would know कि आप कुछ खरीद रहे हैं which is second hand, and no one's going to know that you're selling your stuff. And the curation element which I mentioned meant that कि authenticity और quality के लिए हम check कर रहे हैं. So
ठीक है.
and we always gave a lot of details on the website, and it's something that stayed through the 10 years, because we started like this कि we wrote a description कि ये ऐसे है, this has a quality score, this is, so we use words like pre-loved and gently used, right? These are terminologies to not make it sound like secondhand, bad. And quality check was also very important for us, not just authenticity के लिए, but in terms of quality. So the idea was that what you see is what you get. That means जो आपने online देखा, आपको
वही.
वही मिल रहा है. And for most people, they'd be like, this is even better than what you showed me on the internet and on the website. I can't even see these marks जो आप लोग mention कर रहे हैं. And we would also try to keep a check in terms of, and we still do, कि अच्छा this doesn't meet. Even if it's some fancy designer brand, अगर like फटा हुआ है or it's just full of marks and stuff, we just would not take it, because there has to be a quality parameter.
Yes. तो आपने इस तरह का प्लेटफॉर्म एस्टैब्लिश कर
Yeah.
दिया. एंड हाउ सक्सेसफुल आर यू इन गेटिंग पीपल? फर्स्टली यू नीडेड टू हैव स्टॉक. वो कितनी जल्दी आपको मिलना शुरू हो गया? डिड पीपल स्टार्ट approaching you very quickly?
So I think it was just one of those things where there was a lot of word of mouth, where we are obviously, when you see something online, for example, that is secondhand or pre-loved, it would automatically click that I have some things in my cupboard which I am not using. Maybe I can sell them. And like I said, right, कि someone's saying कि it's just taking up space, मुझे देना नहीं है किसी को, because obviously even if you donate it, that value will not be appreciated.
Yes.
And so it kind of just, there was a need, and I think it was about identifying a gap in the market and filling it. So Secret Stash was a first mover in this space, and it's really, one saw that it was about building like a market also, right? Like I said, where
The first ones don't always succeed, but you were able to. तो एक जब आपने ये लॉन्च कर दिया और सब कुछ होना शुरू हो गया, तो what was it like? Were you getting lots and lots of inquiries and people wanting to buy stuff? Did the site become really popular?
So it took time. And I think I started this as I started this. So I did quit my corporate job, and I started, but I was doing it kind of as a side hustle. Okay, I was doing a bunch of freelance stuff and some other
So
things
साथ
at the
साथ
same
और भी
time.
काम चलता जा.
हाँ, because वही होता है कि you've left a stable thing for a while, and initially you're like, okay, I can do this, but then that whole not imposter syndrome, but like you'd be like, oh my god, how am I going to pull this off? So I think to make sure I was having some form of a steady income, I was doing a bunch of small other things at the same time, and it gave me that allowance to start building it, and it took time. So the very interesting thing is when I launched the brand initially, the idea was that not only will we do this marketplace, a curated marketplace with branded items, and it was international brands that you don't get in Pakistan that easily, but simultaneously I had approached a couple of local designers, and at that time, like I said, e-commerce was not so like as everyone has a website now, वैसे नहीं था. And so I was like, I'll do a flash sale for you. Do you have dead stock, leftover stock? And like a really popular top designer was like, okay, I have all these pieces, you can do this for me. And I'd never been on sale, okay? So a lot of pre-hype which was done there, and we'd use like Facebook groups and tools and things like that. And the idea was that gave a really big bang of a launch.
उससे आपको boost मिल गया
So we
एकदम.
got a boost, right? So the launch was a great way. Uske baad, it was slowly. I then realized that this is not really something that I want to pursue, because there's only so much saturate बहुत हो जाता है जल्दी से. Like not everyone was giving good stock. So the launch was great. The realization was like, अच्छा, let's focus on this marketplace. So it wasn't a pivot. It was just a focus. कि अच्छा अब यही focus करते हैं. ये brands जो नहीं मिलते यहाँ पे, and a good price, good deal, authenticity, let's do that. And I was about slowly bringing it in, right? You weren't trying to be like overnight to change नहीं होने वाला है, right? But it was kind of creeping in slowly. People were looking at it, and we got traction, and it was a steady rise.
आपने 2014 में launch किया business.
December 2014.
So almost 2015.
Yeah, 2015, 10 years, I'd say.
So तकरीबन 10 साल लगे, and let's say at its peak, were you getting lots and lots of people? What sort of volumes would you have through the business in terms of people buying and selling?
So we've had steady growth. So the business is still growing to this day, and it was a growing, profitable business. And I think the interesting change, which I think had an impact on globally and locally in terms of e-commerce, and as we call reselling, re-commerce, is the fact that COVID.
Yes.
So that really, like, e-commerce, online shopping in Pakistan exponentially increased. And at that time, in the resale space, this was a trend globally seen as well, is re-commerce also started growing very, very fast. Pakistan market mein you had a lot of Instagram pages suddenly crop up, right? And we have businesses which were getting stock from the EPZ, the export processing zone. So I don't know how much, and I don't want to digress, but there are a lot of businesses in Pakistan which export secondhand clothes and then they re-export it on. So a lot of that started coming, like all the stuff that you see in Africa, Latin America. Pakistan's one of the processing countries for that.
इधर से आके फिर उधर जा रहा है.
Yes, it's very interesting, and highly recommend checking that space out. But what we were seeing is that at that point, suddenly there was a big influx in the local market where there were a lot more pages and people getting into this space. And the idea was not कि और इतने सारे लोग अब आ गए हैं, सब यही कर रहे हैं. It was more like the pie is growing. So it wasn't that my slice of the pie is becoming smaller, it was the pie itself was growing. Of course, COVID ki apni hi challenges thi when that came.
Yes.
And that was also like, anyone who was doing any kind of business, it was just like, okay, now what, right? And it was about...
बहुत मुश्किल वक्त था सबके लिए.
Yeah.
लेकिन online businesses, like you're saying, उनको तो I think एक one-off type hit मिली, in the sense that people were online shopping बहुत बढ़ गई. People started shopping online.
So that was the change. But फिर भी जब आप online business देखते हैं, back end तो offline है ना. And so जब आपका or like your logistics and your operations are offline,
Yes.
right? So you figure out how to manage that. And I had built a team by then. I had a couple of people working, everything. And then suddenly overnight you're like, oh, thank you very much. अब ये मुझे खुद वापस करना होगा, because I started just as me, right? So what was very interesting is that when I quit my corporate job, I had an idea. And I was like, this should exist. Someone should do it. I should do it.
So you did it, and you
I
did
didn't
it.
have a formal business plan. And it's so interesting because I've done programs. I see the startup space, and people go in with such a different mindset. And I was just like, well, this should exist. I have certain skills. What can we do to bring this here?
So what were
Yeah.
the highs and lows जब आप ये कर रही थी सारा कुछ? What were the highs and lows?
I think that anyone who has a Shopify store, when you'd hear that cha-ching, the ding which would come off an order, even after so many years, it would always give you that little bit of a
Yes.
high that you'd see a sale. But jokes aside, I think some of the highs were like some of the amazing programs I got to be a part of, which was really exciting. So I got to do the Global Entrepreneurship Summit. I had applied, which was in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
This is around end of mid 2016. So that's when I realized that, okay, when I came back from that conference, and that was really like exciting, and I was doing this as a side hustle, that I was like, okay, I'm going to go full time for this. Let's give it all in. And just that experience of going there and hearing all these tech CEOs of these big companies. So that was very inspirational and motivational for me. I think one of the other really exciting things which I got to do is I went to China with Alibaba and UNCTAD's e-founders fellowship. So I spent 3 weeks in China
Wow.
in Hongzhou at Alibaba's, at the
That would have been
headquarters.
something quite amazing.
That was, we heard
What?
Jack Ma come and talk to our
Oh,
class, and we got to really actually learn how that business works and how it grew. And, every single process, they really immersed us in that business. And I think that also in itself was a fantastic experience. So I think the highs, of course, were growing the business, seeing it grow. And I think for me, on a personal level, it was always really, it was always great when people who didn't know you were shopping from your brand. And that was really key, right? When you start, it's word of mouth, all of that. But from the get-go, I would be told that, you don't want people who know you as your customers. It's actually validating when people who don't know you are shopping from
yes,
you.
yes, yes.
And we've had international orders like randomly from like some stranger in America or London.
Ordering.
They were searching online, unko kuch mila tha. Even India, I remember, this is like quite a few years ago, where someone was like, I want to buy this. And we were like, okay, I don't know how we're going to get this across, but through Dubai, we shipped it. But yeah, there were a lot of interesting experiences like that. And I think the lows were, anyone who's an entrepreneur will tell you कि हमेशा आपकी journey ऊपर ही नीचे roller coaster की
Yes, it's
होती
like a
है.
roller coaster जिसको कहते हैं.
Always.
One of the things, even when I used to work in Australia, some of my female clients used to say that being a female was a challenge. And over time, I ended up with an army of clients who are all women. And sometimes when they used to go to the bank, they would say, typical Australian accent, okay, love, where's your husband? So you're young and you're a female. Let's talk about the challenges you would have faced when you were trying to build this business. Was it more difficult for you than, let's say, a middle-aged person who launches a similar business?
I think that's an interesting question. So I felt like because it was an online business and I had a background, I can't deny my privilege of my education and all of that, and working in corporate also gave me, a leg up also that allows you to understand how one can run this, right? I think the thing was that I always believed that social media and being online is kind of an equalizer in terms of anyone can start a business anywhere. And so I didn't try to let that hinder me. I think, of course, there are always challenges as a female. And I think that one of the things that I used to get early on, and I think that's where you realize you have to stay in your lane, is that, and I knew that as someone who was a male founder who would have started this business would never have gotten that, right? Is that, so is this like, are you looking to scale this, or is this like what was the word used? A lifestyle business,
It's a
right?
lifestyle business.
While I understand where that was coming from, I felt like, a man would never have been asked this question, right?
Yes.
Even if he was doing it as a side hustle, or even if and this was after I was side hustling, when I'd gone full in, I felt like that question would never have been asked.
Yeah,
Is
ये तो
this
है. I mean, you have
lifestyle
to.
business,
You
right?
have to say.
And I think you kind of realize that, but I think the advantage as a female founder, focusing on a female audience, was like, know your customer, right? Anyone who's in any kind of business knows that you need to know your customer. And because I was a female Pakistani targeting Pakistani women, it was like, I know my customer, I am my customer.
It's a great advantage. Excellent. So business established ho gaya, you achieved success and everything, and then just recently, as we get to around 2025, you decided to sell the business. Why did you do that? Did you not see a scope beyond what you had already achieved?
I think I've been doing this for a while. I mean, I know I've been doing it
Almost,
for a
almost
while,
10
almost
years.
10 years, right? And I think that I felt that I had reached a point where I was looking at exploring different options and opportunities, and I believed that the business definitely has scalability and potential. There are a lot of players in the market now, and just the size of Pakistan as a market, and then even looking at the region, there's so much opportunity. But I felt for me in my journey that it was time to pass it on to someone
ये जो
else.
एग्जिट स्ट्रैटेजी थी इसके एवरी एंटरप्रेन्योर वांट्स टू बिल्ड अ बिजनेस एंड एग्जिट आपने सक्सेसफुली कर लिया है एंड होपफुली यू विल गेट टू डू इट मेनी टाइम्स ओवर अगेन
Inshallah.
लेकिन ये जो एग्जिट प्रोसेस था ये किस तरह का था हाउ डिफिकल्ट और इजी
It wasn't. It took time. It wasn't ke overnight hua tha. I think one of the first things and the realization was that okay, um, let's like what is the value of the business, right? That was something that was very important, right? So it was done properly. I had a proper formal valuation done to know that okay, this is what I've built. What is it worth, right? 10 years of work. What is it worth? And that was really important to have that first step done.
Did that valuation come in with what you were expecting?
It was very close to what I had in mind, which was also great as a validity. Okay, you were like, okay, I've built this business. It's a bootstrap business,
Yes.
and iski value, 10 saal ki mehnat ke baad, I would like it to be somewhere near this figure, and it was very close to it, which really validated my work. So for me, that was, and I think that's a very important exercise to do. And I think especially with my background being more marketing and all of that, and obviously my books and everything were in order, but that financial plan and projections and all were also key to further validate that what I've built has value. So the
Yes.
customers were there. It's a profitable business, it's growing. There are challenges, of course, right? And for anyone who was in this space 2 years ago, right, it was very challenging when the dollar like hit like 280. It's stabilized at 280 now, but when that jump happened,
It's very difficult.
it was difficult, right, in Pakistan doing a business. And, honestly, I'll be honest, I feel like some of the challenges, it's not necessarily about being a female in Pakistan, but being a business owner, small business owner, or any kind of business owner, running ads, right? You have to use your credit card. The credit card has like taxes of like, well, the last time till I was doing it, it was almost like 25% over and above because you have all these
Yes, this is
taxes.
something that everyone who uses a credit card for foreign exchange transaction faces. पहले exchange rate पे
Yeah.
आपको hit पड़ती है, फिर बैंक के charges हैं. It's a
Then they have
nightmare.
advertising services and IT services. So you're getting this massive hit running a business in an online business because you have to use these platforms of Google and Meta for any
Yes,
business
and
to
then you have to pay
exist.
in dollars, like you're saying. So बड़ा मसला
Yeah.
है.
So these kind of challenges, of course, you ride them out, and I think those are challenges for anyone in Pakistan. But I think the idea was that I knew and I understood for the business that I had reached a certain level, and for it to go to the next level and to really scale and go from a small business to like a medium-sized business, a big business, is it needed investment. And it wasn't about, and even at the beginning of my journey, I realized that either when you go to VCs or any of these, and as a solo founder, it was do I build the business or do I raise money? And I was like, I'm going to build the business.
Okay, so आपका focus बहुत clear था कि business build करना है.
Yeah.
Let's talk about two or three things. Then आपने जब business शुरू किया, तो you had no investment. It's all self-funded. आप कह रही हैं
Yeah.
bootstrapping, right? Up to the point you start, then you decide to exit. You could have raised funding and taken it to the next level, but you've exited. बहुत सारे जो founders होते हैं, entrepreneurs, they struggle with this valuation वाली जो आपने बात की है. And I think you hit the mark with two or three key points जो आपने कहे हैं. कि valuation is driven by revenue, profitability. If it's an online business, it's the number of users or subscribers you have, the number of transactions you're having. So if all of those numbers are good, you're going to get a good valuation. But if any of these was not good, for example, if you were making losses despite good revenue, it would affect your valuation, right? And was that your own experience as well? Yeah, you are.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was a fair valuation, keeping in mind like market conditions, the projections of the business as well, and different methodologies. And it was very important in this exercise that I outsourced it versus trying to do it myself.
No, it's
And that
not
was,
something you can do
yeah,
yourself.
like,
Yes.
and especially if you don't have like the like a financial background like myself in terms of just doing these kind of numbers. And I think the third party doing this as a third party exercise was also very key with regards to ensuring that everything is cross-checked, right? And I think coming back to your original question where you asked me, okay, the process. So that was the first step. Okay, आप
आपने
business
वैल्यूएशन
value
कराई.
करवाया था.
Yep.
And it was a lot of different conversations with a lot of different people where you are just saying that even initially it was also just talking about growth, right? Okay, I had a one pager, a memo, and I was like just chatting with different people saying that, I'm looking at possibility of investors or sale.
Exit.
Yeah. And so it was just different conversations, and it took a while, and there's an element of luck as in anything in life.
Yes, so you had good luck.
Yeah, and it worked out where there was an interested buyer who was looking at taking a business which was existing and growing it. And things just, it took a while. So I think the process also of valuing last year, where I was like, whatever I want to do, even if I'm looking for investment, I need to know what the current value of this business is before I say,
So
"Aap."
कितना time लगा from the time you
I think this
decided?
conversation started, like the valuation and all was done last summer. So from there, it's like a year. It took a year.
So
once
तकरीबन 12 months का period है from the
Yeah.
time you decided thinking about it, and I think that's
Yeah.
quite realistic actually. इससे
Yes.
short करना बहुत मुश्किल है because there's
Yeah.
so many things you have to go
Yes,
through.
100%.
Okay, so you're out of this business. What's next for you?
So last year I did my NLP coaching certification. So I'm officially a certified
NLP
master
coach.
coach. And that is something that I had initially started for myself, and then I decided to pursue that completely. So that accreditation, along with my experience as an entrepreneur, and a founder, is something that I want to, at least for now, pursue coaching. And I'm really interested in working with leadership and entrepreneurs and fellow founders, and use that experience to work with them in terms of, working through your challenges both personally and professionally to really grow and flourish and thrive in your business. And
I think that's very much needed. In fact, we often talk about the fact that जो लोग entrepreneurship पढ़ाते हैं universities वगैरह में, they are professors with no real experience. Most of them have never run a business or never will. शायद 20 साल पहले उन्होंने एक PhD कर ली हो, on the basis of which they teach students from case studies from America, etc., etc. So to have people like you who are successful, who have built a business from scratch, have gone through the painful process of building it, then exit, and then the happier process of exiting it. I think you'd be a great coach and a great mentor to these people.
Thank you so much. I really hope so. I think it's something that would be interesting to pursue and see. And I do think that experience can also, teach you a lot to think of
And
how do you do
the
it.
last thing I would like to ask, हमारे जो viewers हैं, there are a lot of young people, and a lot of them would like to do what you've done. What words of wisdom can you impart for those young people?
I think that I mean, there are a lot of things to say. Like, it can be challenging working in Pakistan. So I think grit and determination and, picking yourself up is important. So
Yes.
I think that's really important, right? Where you are like, okay, ye ho gaya, I've had this problem, and we've been through a lot, right? With my businesses, we had mentioned challenges earlier, but things like Instagram going down, or in Pakistan, internet सही से नहीं चल रहा है, या deliveries हो गई हैं, या बारिश हो रही है, और delivery नहीं हो सकती है, और धरना हो गया है. Like, we have so many weird problems, which I think that people who don't work here would understand that. And you just have to have the problem solving mindset. You're like, okay, this has happened. What do we do to fix this? So how do we manage that? I think, so that's important. And I think by default, we do tend to have a survivor mindset from being Pakistani.
Yes.
So implementing that and not giving up, I think that's important. I think, often people will say that, they'll try and do everything, but I think finding your niche is really important, and then knowing your customer. There's like a shotgun approach जो लोग शायद हर किसी को target करेंगे तो कोई ना कोई hit हो जाएगा.
So you really need to pick the niche. I
Yeah,
mean, you
pick
had
your niche, know your customer, and focus on that, right?
Yes.
I think that's really important, because I think that's something that I really strongly stand by. I think building a brand in terms of standing on your ethos and your values is really important. So trust and transparency is
ठीक है.
really important. अगर आपको जवाब नहीं पता हो, don't lie, right? You can always be like, I'll get back to you. So good customer service entails that you satisfy your customer, but also, stand by what you stand by in terms of proper
Yes.
values. And yeah, like having a good work ethic, I think, is really important in this day and age also. That, you don't want to be unprofessional, but at the same time, a work-life balance also, I would say, is really important.
A lot of pieces of advice wrapped into that answer. So the work-life balance, being true to your customers, picking your niche, as we say, knowing what not to do. Like, don't chase after every possible customer. Once you've decided you have a focus, you know what your target market is, then that's where you're going. Because you can do, especially in the sort of business you had, you could have gone in 100 different directions and probably not been good at any of those.
Yeah.
But picking one specific area like you did was very, very successful for you.
And I think I would add to that is also don't start everything from zero. There's so many tools out there, AI, social media tools. There's a lot of stuff available. And if you have an idea and you want to pursue it in Pakistan, and Pakistan has that opportunity as a, developing market, and there's things which haven't been done, which can be done, and you can tweak and execute it. But up zero, se you don't restart the wheel, right? You can always see something that's done somewhere else,
Exactly.
and know how you stand out versus trying to figure everything out from zero, right?
That's one big advantage in Pakistan,
Yeah.
because we are behind the rest of the world in many
Yeah,
things.
and
We
so
have-
that is something to think about. Like you said, it's a tough market, but then it's also, I think, one of the places where you can really pursue entrepreneurship as opposed to other places.
Yes, thank you very much, Nazish. It's been a wonderful conversation. I've enjoyed listening to the success story about the success of your business and also the challenges that you've had along the way. And wish you luck in the next phase of your life and your entrepreneurial journey.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us on The Boss. This is Amer Qureshi coming to you from Karachi this week. I hope you've enjoyed this very, very interesting conversation with Nazish and her journey as an entrepreneur. Please join us next week. We'll see you then.